Hello and welcome to the Nutritious and Delicious podcast with me, Bethany. My mission is to support busy parents all over the world to learn time management while taking care of their nutritional, physical, and mental health. After all, a healthy family starts with a healthy parent. So I'm super excited today. I have Rae Lynn here with me today on the podcast. So Rae Lynn Danielle is helping women from discomfort, overwhelm, and disconnection to be present, embodied in joy and self-love. She intuitively combines a variety of modalities such as breath work, meditation, yoga, Reiki, deep cellulite healing to support you. This is creating amazing transformation. So welcome. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yay. So today we're going to be talking about something really big here because I know a lot of moms struggle with this, and this is self-care for women in times of chaos. And Rae Lynn here is going to give us 4 limiting beliefs that she actually sees is quite common among women, especially mothers. And we're going to have a conversation around it today. So I'd like you to start with our first one here that you hear.
Yeah. So, limiting beliefs are definitely one of the biggest things that I work through with my clients. And the one that I find to be the most prominent for moms and most women actually is just, I don't have time.
Yeah.
I am too busy.
That is a big one I've noticed.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of it as well. Let's
Yeah.
be real. I am a mom of 2 boys, and I find that that's my first excuse and limiting belief that I always turn to.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you probably have the same. You're a mom as well. And
Yeah, I think on this one, a lot of people, when they say they don't have time, I instantly think about sort of myself, and I ask myself that question: am I actually like managing my time properly?
yeah,
So that's where I usually,
a lot of it comes back to.
definitely. So
Yeah.
what do you kind of see with that when people are saying like they don't have time? Like, do you think it's just kind of an excuse to not eat really well or exercise? Like, is that kind of where the excuses come in?
Yeah, I find that for most of the women that I interact with and I coach, I don't have time is almost a safety net for them to just stay in that busy mindset. And that's where they cultivate their feeling of being needed and validated from other people. And something that is really big is that the first thing I ask them is, how much time do you spend on your phone?
That's a good
How
one.
much time do you scroll through social media with no intention?
That you can get so lost. Like, that's a whole nother topic with this social media. But yeah, you can jump onto a social media and be like, oh, I've been on here for 2 hours.
Yeah,
know?
I actually have had so many women come to me with this one, like, I don't have time to like cultivate a self-care practice or self-love.
Right.
And it's been a driving force for me because it was something that I used personally before diving into my own work and obviously training in all these modalities. Mm-hmm. It was something that I used as my excuse for a really long time. And it wasn't until I realized that when I create that time for myself, mm-hmm. and when I actually carve it out and make it to be a very important appointment for myself that I cannot miss, I become a more present mom. I become more calm, and I experience more joy when I make myself a priority.
That's very true. I heard before, I want to touch on this because it kind of hit a nerve when you said this, but when women are using this, I don't have time, it's coming from a place of needing to feel needed by other people. And that's really interesting because, you know, a lot of women, we talk as if like our family will break if we're not there, or if I have a nap, or if I do this for myself, you know, they're going to suffer for this. And it's like this guilt. And like, I know that's another subject, the whole mom guilt
That's
thing.
number 2. So let's just bring them together.
Okay. So give me number 2.
So number 2 is just like feeling guilty for creating that time for ourselves. And they go hand in hand, like you just said, mm-hmm. feeling guilty and not having that time and wanting to feel needed.
Right.
We could go really far into this. I think that both of those come from that space of almost disconnect from who we are as women. Because when you go from being a woman, we'll say, to a mom, mm-hmm. there's almost like a disconnect of who am I now?
Yeah, it's like a self-identity crisis, I noticed. And I definitely, from personal experience, I noticed that with my first child. I think because I had never been a mom before. Second time around, it was like, well, I'm already here now, so I already know kind of this feeling. And it's almost like a feeling of, can I get that back? And the more you fight it, it doesn't work. You can't say like, oh, I want, my old freedom back, because it looks different and it's changed. And I think a lot of people resist change. So you kind of fall into that trap of, well, I don't have a life anymore and everybody needs me. And again, it could be coming from a place of, feeling needed, especially by your children.
Yeah. And if all of these, like the feeling guilty and that not having time and feeling needed, it all comes back down to ourselves. So if we switch that and we go inwards rather than looking outside for everything, we really realize that we are needing to feel needed and we are needing to feel loved. And when we choose to put ourselves first, and so what I found was my very first step in this was cultivating a morning routine. It was what was easiest for me as a mom, to wake up half an hour, 45 minutes before my children. That was guaranteed time where I was completely by myself and I was able to start there. That could be having a hot coffee. That could be reading a book. It could be doing a 20-minute yoga series. I've actually, we'll talk about this later, but that's part of one of my offerings, is that I host and I guide women who are just so used to the busy life to come back and create that time for themselves.
Right.
Half an hour can make the whole entire difference. There's a whole bunch more to this, but like when you begin your day with yourself, and making sure that you're loved the way that you desire to be loved, that there creates so much ripple effect into your whole entire day.
That's interesting, because I think I naturally do that myself. I find I either take the morning for myself, and if I don't get the morning, then I'll take the evening. And that's just sort of the natural way I fall into self-care. You probably see this too, but most of the time, and myself included, you probably have to get to a bit of pain, I think, before you actually hit that point, because you get to the point where you feel like, this is not the mom I want to be, or the partner that I want to be. And, you got to almost get to a point where it's like, I've hit the basement floor. What can I do to help myself? And that's where I think moms start to realize, hey, like basic self-care is like massive.
Yeah, and that's really like where, when you were introducing me there, like when women hit burnout and overwhelm, they just become uncomfortable in their life.
Yes.
And most of the time, like we said, that's a disconnect from ourselves, like a loss of sense of self. Like we don't know who we are, floating through the day, just doing the same thing all the time. Whether you're working or a stay-at-home mom, whether you're a single mom or you have a partner, like it's still all the same, right? Like we just have so much to do in our day that we almost forget. So I love that you say that you shift. Like you've practiced this, obviously, like you are aware and you have that self-awareness where if you don't get that time in the morning, you have that time in the evening. And what I have found with a lot of the women that I work with, though, is that by the time they get to the evening, because they haven't been practicing self-care, they're so exhausted that it isn't actually filling for them.
Yeah.
That's when they allow all of those excuses to come up and those limiting beliefs as to why they cannot create that time. So my encouragement is to get it in the morning. And if you're a stay-at-home mom or if you work from home, I often also, if you don't wake up a half an hour earlier than your children, I have encouraged moms to do it for that first 45 minutes when the kids are gone to school.
Yeah.
Or that very first nap time. But that's hard because some babies don't nap consistently.
Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of the moms I hear in the group is like their babies are struggling or sleep regression and all that, and they're not napping, and they're like, oh, I've lost my time for myself. Or like, I remember that too, sort of like when the babies start to drop their naps and stuff, you're like, that was my me time, So when moms are actually working out, like for myself, I notice when I work out at home, I have to carve that time out. And then I hear other moms say like, well, I don't have time to work out. And we have the same amount of kids, and, I also work from home, and, I'm a single parent most of the time, myself here as well. And, when I think about it, I think, well, what's the difference between what I'm doing versus what they're doing? And it's my time management. So I'm waking up earlier, or I'm using that time when they've just gone to school for time for myself. So I think that's where the difference
I
is.
hear from you there is that you are deeply prioritizing yourself.
I have to, because again, I got to the point where I was burning both candles at each end, right? And for myself, it was like, I'm on my own doing this parent thing. If I'm not here, then who's gonna help my boys, right? So I had to almost learn to deal with that guilt. So that was, obviously our number 2. So what is our number 3?
One that I hear most common after those first 2, because those first 2 are very prominent and very regular, is like allowing the past dialogue and language that we choose to use about ourselves and our past experiences to come up now. So things like, I worked out for 6 months and then I fell off the bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it comes down to like, I didn't make time for myself before, so like, what's the difference now?
It's almost like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It sounds like the person's taking like an emotional beating stick and almost telling themselves, I'm going to fail anyways, so therefore whatever I do in the future isn't going to make a difference.
Yeah, and this is almost like why, honestly, everything we're talking about right now is why I first invested in a coach, because my inner dialogue was so in that cycle of guilt and I don't have time and all the limiting beliefs. And it was my past really that was controlling that. It was in the past. I had done it for 6 months and then I'd fallen off. And then, or like, before I was a mom, even it was a cycle that I was in. I would do self-care for 6 months and then I would do no self-care for a year. And it was just like a past pattern that I wasn't able to fulfill. So I always felt like I had failed.
In this sort of realm, do you think it comes into play of women hearing things from family members, like the way that they were raised? Because that's what's coming up for me when I'm hearing this, is that, kind of like that suck it up mentality, or you can just push through it, or things like that. Like it's kind of like the different generations sort of passed down to us. And I think we don't realize we are sort of taking that and we're on autopilot with it.
And that is something that we deeply dive into in my programs and my one-on-one coaching, is like the inner child healing or reparenting ourselves. And something I always want to emphasize is our parents and our caregivers and the adults and people who influence us in our early years, they did everything they could with love, exactly with what they had for their tools.
Right.
Times have shifted so drastically, especially in, say, the last 25 years, that it is now more common for people to be doing their inner work, to be recognizing these patterns. And they have names now like inner child work and reparenting, and they've always been there, but now they've become more talked about.
I like that, the reparenting thing, because it's almost like you kind of have to look at what you're going through and sort of self-healing first to become the person that you want to be for your children.
Yeah, and that's really where I began this work, because that's my rock bottom was very much. I just deeply knew I was not being the mom, the woman, the partner that I desired to be in my heart. Right. So I was disconnected from my heart, from my truth, and I was making decisions based on things that weren't really aligned with me anymore. I had ignored that little nudge, I guess you'd call, that inner knowing that, like, hey, you're going down a path that doesn't align for you or doesn't light you up. Like, it's time for you to do some self-care. It's time for you to take care of yourself. And I ignored that for so long that it started to be louder, and to the point where like that mental breakdown was going to happen. It was inevitable for me to hit that rock bottom. And that's really my mission, is to have women and moms not have to hit rock bottom, to cultivate a self-care and a self-love practice, and to do things like reparenting. And I think that reparenting and inner child work go hand in hand. To love ourselves so deeply the way that we desire is very much what inner child work is.
I agree.
And then to reparent ourselves and like be the parent that we needed. And when you become a mom, let's be real, like that is a part of the journey. Like Definitely. It is inevitable as you become a mom that you're going to have to work through some stuff that maybe triggers you or activates
Definitely.
something in you to shift. And that was like, that's a defining moment for women. And let's shift it. Let's make self-care and self-love something that is normalized so that we don't have to hit rock bottom to wake up,
Right.
to be present. That kind of shifts into like the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one that I hear, like the fourth limiting belief that's really prominent, it's not necessarily spoke about,
Mm-hmm.
but we all do it, and it's putting ourselves last.
Yeah.
And that's where that whole, like, we talked about women beginning their self-care routine right when they wake up. But if you put yourself last, that's where you're going to get to like 10 o'clock at night and all the dishes have been done, and then you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually no energetic space to give yourself the love that you desire. And that's where you're putting yourself last.
It's like the to-do list. It's like you put the dishes and mopping the floors like before yourself, and you wonder why, you know, you're starting to have like emotional breakdowns or breakdowns in your relationships, friendships, or you're not as patient as a mom as you thought you would be. You know, it's telltale signs throughout your life. And again, I see with moms too, is that when it comes back to putting themselves last as well, because I have to, because I'm being selfish, again, it all ties together, right? I'm being selfish, that I'm putting, and then they get resentful of their partners because their partners are actually not putting themselves last. They're putting themselves first, which is what we should be doing too. And that's difficult as a new mom. Like, what kind of advice, I guess, could you give to a new mom? Because I know I went through this as well myself. When you have a new baby and you're doing what feels like everything, and you're feeling resentful towards your partner because they're kind of doing what they want, their life hasn't changed, and it can really destroy a relationship.
Oh yeah. Yes. Communication is huge, and it's scary. Like, when we are not, in our society, it is not supported or taught how to ask for things that we need.
Right.
And that's where we struggle. Like, because a lot of the time it's, hey, could you cuddle and play with your son or daughter so I can go have a shower? Mm-hmm. Or, hey, would you mind waking up for this feeding because I'm just like really exhausted? And it's almost like, if you have a partner, it's almost that we expect them to know what we need.
Right. And that's not going to get you anywhere.
It's not the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that I really wanted to say is, you said something that just like really lit me up there. And you said, it's almost like it's selfish. Mm-hmm. And something I share with every person, woman, man, human that I work with is that self-care is not selfish. It is selfless.
Exactly.
When you show up for yourself first, when you are putting yourself first, it is a crazy ripple effect in your life. And you're going to see that as you do that deeper, you actually receive more of what you want in your life, a deeper connection with your partner, more joyous moments, and being present with your kids. That to-do list actually disappears, because you know what? The dishes and the laundry, that's never going to disappear.
Yeah.
Those are life things that are going to keep piling up.
Yep.
But what you're going to find is that you're going to navigate your self-care in a way that allows you to be more present and find a way to incorporate those just into your day and the joyous moments.
When I think about what you just said, it makes me think about when women don't want to do the self-work and the self-healing, the to-do lists get bigger and they're more about minute things. And it's a way of, I find, for avoidance.
Yes, very, very true. Because it's scary. If self-care hasn't been something that you have seen growing up, if it hasn't been something that has been taught to you, because it's not taught to very many of us, it's foreign and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
No, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I think back to sort of the generational thing, again, we've been taught as, I guess, a society and as women, that the women before us and the women before that, they were hustlers, like with their kids, and you didn't get a break, and dad went to work and mom stayed home, and things have changed like massively. And I think we've still adopted that mentality, but now we're doing it with work and household and everything else. And it's just become this crashing society in the Western world.
Yes. And I deeply feel that. Like there's no equality in energy. So you're giving from an empty, the saying is like you're giving from an empty cup, right? Like you can't pour anything from an empty cup. And if you're not refilling yourself, then you're not going to have anything left to give. And that's where frustration, overwhelm, like lack of patience is going to come from. And something that I heard that I now use is, rather than pouring from an empty cup or filling your cup, something that I heard a therapist speak about once was actually having your teacup up here and having it fill and having it full all the time. And when that overflow pours down into this teacup, that's the teacup that you pour from. Never allowing yourself to be drained at all, building yourself so full that your overflow is what you pour from.
Yeah.
And
your
so,
reserve.
Yeah, your reserve. And so that there alone, when you have that reserved energy, you're going to realize that that's when, like, you hear people speak about manifestation and stuff, but that's where it comes from. When you're in that space of being so full and connected in yourself, that's where life seems to flow much easier.
That's amazing.
And it is simple steps. We as society, like I know we're talking about self-care, and in chaotic times, it's hard because I don't know about you, but when I was younger, self-care to me was going for a pedicure. Like, that's what I saw my mom do. She went and got pedicures, or she went and got her hair cut, or nails, a manicure. Like, that's what I saw from my mom and my grandmother. And that's what I had classified as self-care for so long. I didn't realize that self-care was the little things, like getting up in the morning, taking a deep breath, taking some time with myself to just like be in silence and stillness.
Well, how often do you get your hair cut or your pedicure?
Well, really, if you want to know the truth, before I started to practice self-care deeply, it was like every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like,
yeah. So, something that my very first step into self-care was actually just literally putting my hand on my heart and taking 5 deep breaths. That was like my step one, because anything beyond that was so overwhelming for me that I didn't actually know how to incorporate it. So for me, I just woke up, and instead of grabbing for my phone right away, I just took 5 intentional deep breaths.
It's a good way to reduce your anxiety. And I find I've had to do that too myself. I think I have maybe practiced that myself, especially when I've woken up either from sleeping, having anxious dreams, things like that. Again, before you reach for your phone and start sort of looking at more things that are going to make you anxious, taking that time just to do a few deep breaths and just sort of getting yourself back to sort of that calm state of mind.
Yeah, and when you first awake, you're in a brainwave of like receptivity and creativity still, because that's what you are when you're sleeping, right? You're in all those really creative, peaceful mindsets. So something that I share, I've actually, like, this is one of my memberships is this, but when you wake up and you reach for your phone, as most of society does, whether it's to check your email, to scroll socials, or to just see if you've missed a call or like somebody's text you, you are inviting like 200 people into your bedroom. Especially if you're in socials where you have like over 1,000 friends per se. Like, you're inviting all of those people into your bedroom. Could you imagine opening your door and having 200 people come into your room?
That's a lot of
first
energy.
Thing in the morning.
It's overwhelming.
Right. And so when we reach for our phone, it's doing the same thing. So I invite each and every one of your listeners. It's something that I practice every morning. I'm still looking for an alarm clock, an old school one that's not my phone, but I use my phone for my alarm clock. But other than shutting my alarm off and waking up, I don't look at my phone until my kids have gone to school. On the weekends, I don't look at my phone until after 9 a.m. I have put my phone, like, depending on what phone you use, like with iPhone, I can put mine on Do Not Disturb. So from 9 at night until 9 in the morning, my phone is on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, I've had to do that too.
Yeah, and it really allows me to disconnect from that. Because, like I said, even during the day, you're inviting all that energy into your space. And if you're not having a self-care practice to disconnect from that, that's going to be where you gather your energy, where you where you get your external validation and gratification rather than actually turning inwards and being like, hey, how do I need to be loved right now?
Definitely. I like that because I've had to sort of learn that too. And I think that's another complete topic on boundaries.
Yeah.
For me, it was having to sort of turn my phone off, yes, at a specific time at nighttime, and until the morning. And then the weekends, if emails are coming in or people are messaging me about work stuff, I just have to leave it unless it's an emergency. Like I have to look at it like right away. But other than that, like if I'm with my family, that's our family time. And it's, I think, having those boundaries in place, whether you're working from home and that's another one too, is like, I work from home, and obviously with this whole thing going on, my boys being around, that was a massive test because they constantly came in and I felt, again, that was that guilty feeling of, oh, well, they just want a hug, but it kind of started overstepping what I was doing. And I'm like, no, we need to like have a lock on the door. You guys have to realize like this is my set time to work, and then I play with you after. So
I found that the last 2 years has been a big shift for a lot of women, especially women who work at home, but also women who had been used to having that time to do their things.
Definitely.
And shifting and having that flow and flexibility in life is very important. So my morning routine never looks the same. I wake up at the same time consistently if I can, depending on the night. Like if I've had a rough night with the kids, like if there's been like lots of getting up, and then I obviously push that, but I try to get up at the same time every day. So for me, I get up at 6 o'clock every morning. I have a half an hour. For me, my morning routine is very incorporated. Like I've invited people to be a part of it. So I host a membership where every morning from 6 till 6:30, we do our morning routine together.
That's awesome.
And it's Monday to Friday, and it's really cultivated that sense of community that I was craving throughout the last 2 years as well. And it allows us all to show up. And in that space, we breathe, we move, we journal, and we practice gratitude.
I love that.
Gratitude is like the quickest way to raise your frequency. And when you begin your day with what you're grateful for, the things that usually would bother you are going to feel less important.
We do that with the kids too. We do that definitely at dinner. We always ask them what they're grateful for.
That's so exciting. I practice gratitude with my boys all the time. And then the half an hour that I have, because my kids don't get up till 7, I have a half an hour after that where I get to have a hot coffee. I go wash my face. I change. I still am in my comfortable clothes, but I go change and I make myself feel good. So some days I put makeup on, some days I don't. Some days I am just like, I'm going to sit here and enjoy this hot coffee. And a lot of the times I do vision work then. And if you're new to that, that's going to sound crazy to you. But like a lot of the times when I have that hot coffee and that's that like nourishing moment for my soul, that is when I like go into like, what do I desire in life? Who is Rae Lynn when she is living on those 43 acres? What do I crave my weekend to look like? And I like go into a vision set, like basically daydreaming and like get clear on the life I'm creating and who I'm going to be going into that. When I first began though, it was like, how do I want to feel today?
It's what you think about, you bring about.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, you've got some great information in here, and I want to thank you so much for coming on to the Nutritious and Delicious podcast here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so now how can our viewers get more information about changing these limiting beliefs?
It's always my favorite. So I think that I sent you my link. So on my website, raelyndanielle.com, there's a free gift there. It's Rise with Joy. So it is a PDF where you can just print it out and follow through. And that is a great way to start having that self-care first thing in the morning.
That's perfect.
It's guided step by step. If you want to take that one step further, you can join my membership, which is that 30-day group where we start the mornings each day. And that you can get to through my free collective on Facebook, which is Wild at Heart Women's Collective.
Perfect. So in the show notes, I will leave your website, and you can also find her on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll leave the links here in the show notes. So it was a pleasure having you on here, Rae Lynn. I'm so excited for my viewers to be able to see this and use these tools as well.
Thank you so much for inviting me.